Hello everyone and welcome to my oil painting class. And today we are painting Fountain Abbey again. We've got the corridors or the space for the Cellarium, the storage area. Apparently, these gorgeous arches and gorgeous ceiling the Cellarium might have not been seen much because between the columns there were loads of boarded spaces. So the grain would be saved, the wool, all sorts of products for sale and for the use for the monks was stored. So these are all gorgeous structures which I might not be seen in the Abbey's working days. But we can enjoy them now, and that functional architecture to us is very gothic and very exciting. And I love the atmosphere of the bit of a mossy stone, that greenish color, that lovely warmth from the walls. It's fantastic and a gorgeous light. Now, I have two pictures, two black and white pictures today. One just a black and white version of the colored photo. Another one I've just simplified the shadows so we see a little bit more extreme pattern of where the dark is, where some of the most dark shapes are, because we probably will spot some of the kind of the lightest shapes, but anything in between and separating some of the darks might be a little bit tricky. So this is a little help for us. The photograph is quite elongated. We've got more of that panoramic shape. So if you can have that format, that will be fantastic. If not, don't be scared of or trimming part of the window to make it closer to your canvas size, board size, yeah, maybe something like that. Or perhaps extending, imagining what the ceiling might be to kind of extend it a bit more height-wise. But panoramic view is a lovely way of almost seeing extra space of the interior. Now on my palette, I've got some white, buff titanium if you have it. Don't worry if not. Ochre, yellow ochre, cadmium red, deep violet, ultramarine, emerald green, olive green or any yellowish type of green, and some Payne's grey or any black will be fine as well. So I'd like us to start with drawing a tonal plan straight on our board. And then I'd like us to mix some of the ranges of colors, close ranges of colors, and start applying it in kind of planning our tones and identifying them later on with a range of colors, okay? So we're almost doing a very traditional approach to oil painting, getting the tones sorted and then helping ourselves improving our color picture. What I also have done, printed a little grid of darkness, which I will be referring. Sometimes it's easier to refer it by numbers. There is also a lovely simplified names for our lights. Yeah, for example, not just white, quite like the highlights. Yeah, so it's just an off-white. I tend to call it that way. So this might be a little bit of a different vocabulary for us to use. But numbers are also easy to kind of to move about within those 9 numbers. So I'll be referring to them as well. Right, so let's start with using some tips. So our painting is not going to be too oily and not too full of thick paint. So I'm going to start with tips and diluted violet. Violet works really well on top of the ochre background. An ochre background will support that major warmth of the interior. Right, so mixing my pale violet first, and let's plan overall picture. I'm going to find a basic principle what we're going to do about our perspectives. And there are so many columns, there's so many arches, the arches overlap, there's loads of windows, things are quite complex, okay? So let's try to see them in the most simple way. I'm going to find, and I will do that as well on my, hold on my black and white picture here. I'm just going to use a felt tip to outline a couple of shapes. I'm going to find almost the back of the wall of our Cellarium here, that little arch, okay? And I'm interested to see where it's going to be in comparison to the height of our picture. Okay, so this is going to be probably halfway through my picture, and this is where my arch is, okay? And I'm also interested to find if this is my picture's length, this is halfway through, where that arch is going to be, okay, approximately within our right-hand side of the painting. So if I were to find my approximately halfway through point for my board, halfway through point on the side, okay, so this is going to be my kind of somewhere in a line here, might just drop. So my arch is going to be just a tiny bit lower than halfway through point, okay, somewhere here, okay. And okay, this is my halfway through this way, and it's almost maybe somewhere here, approximately. We can move things about as always, but approximately, let's place it there. Okay. The back of the wall probably will continue somewhere there, but that wall will be stopping. Okay. So we just need that back arch. There is another, so I've circled slightly, I think it keeps on going and going and going, that most furthest space of that back wall. It's probably going to be even somewhere here, okay? But I went for the most, so it's almost like a dark line around it in the photo. And it might help us, if I were to make a contact with a tiny shape, from my perspective, it would be harder for me to be more accurate with my angle. So I've just opted out for an extra arch, which is slightly bigger here. Okay, so there's an arch with an arch, and there's a door, so then it hopefully makes sense where we're looking at. Okay. Maybe that one is a little over it as well. Okay. So for 1 point perspective, which we have, it's always easier to find the back wall of what we're drawing. I think that back wall is more or less finishing somewhere here. Next, we're going to look for two lines. One is going to be touching the bases of our columns, okay? And it's going to come to the corner of our darker arch here. And another is going to be the base of our floor here. Okay. So let's look for those lines. all the same lines will come to the same point, so that one will start going behind. I think visually it's bending a little bit. I think that's where the floor must be changing, unless it's my lines. Maybe my lines just jumped up here a bit more. Okay, thick pen. So let's find the line for the bottom of the columns and the bottom of the floor meeting the wall. How do we do that? We need that little spot, yeah, that little area, and we need that little area. Okay, now if you haven't got the right proportion with the photograph, it might be a little bit difficult to identify that measurement. So another option is to use the direction of the line and very carefully drag it to the corner of our arch. Okay, and if I were to draw it that way, you can use a piece of paper as a ruler. You can use a piece of card or a ruler. Ruler might get mucky. Okay, and then I can compare that direction. Okay, almost there. And you can drag it as often as you can. It's not as often as repeat the process as many times as you need. Okay, and I'm going to do the same with this one. Okay, I've got about approximate angle. Okay, I can't move it, my brush, once I picked it up. I can't just change it when I'm turning it, coming close to my painting. I have to keep the same angle. Okay, and I'm going to check it again. I think that's about right. So that's a visual comparison. So then if any of the proportions of our surface are different, we're visually recognizing it, that it's looking right. Okay. Good. Next, we're going to pick up some vertical lines. We're going to look for our columns. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and they started to get smaller and smaller and smaller. So if I'll go for main 3 arches and main 3 to 4 columns, so just as a vertical line, approximately, okay, 1. So the first arch is quite wide, so I'm more interested into that visual recognition of it. Next one is a little bit narrower. Next one is just a tiny bit more narrower, and the other ones could just go a bit more as just verticals. If they're slightly similar, it doesn't matter. I wouldn't be able, there's no point of making them perfectly different here. There's such a small spaces, our width of the brush will not allow it anyway. Okay. Now we see the back wall and those columns more openly in comparison to our right-hand side wall. We only see maybe a couple of, well, one opening part of the window. We can see a tiny bit of another one. We can see a tiny minuscule amount of another one. Then the whole wall becomes a blur, more of a smudge, very, very little space for it left. So for the other side of the wall, so my probably third window finishes somewhere here, so maybe a centimeter for me widths for all the range of the space between here and there, just tiny, tiny, tiny bit of space. And I'm going to put more divisions for one window, another window, and maybe the third window, which is the big one here. Maybe there's some gaps as well between them. Okay, so I might have some of the windows there, but I haven't decided on the line for it. So again, if I were to put my brush or something straight against the window cells for the right-hand side wall and drag that line across, I'm looking for, if I were to connect my floor line with the columns, bottoms of the columns line somewhere here. Okay, I'm gonna have a dot vanishing point approximately somewhere here. So when I'm looking for that window line, where do I connect it to? Okay, it's reasonably low. It's need to meet that vanishing point somewhere here. So maybe the bottom of my brush is going to be somewhere here. Okay, so it's just below our horizon line. Okay, somewhere here. Horizon line is a line going through our vanishing point and just going horizontally. So I'm just looking for that angle. Okay, we don't really need our horizon line. Okay. So I can maybe put my windows now in. Okay, one window. This line we don't need. Another window, but it's going to be covered by another shape over, so not going to see much of that. And another window will have just a minuscule amount of it. So we'll look for patterns there. All we needed is those little lines for direction. Okay. Now arches. Arches above our Cellarium and also the Gothically pointy arches for the space to go through. Right, so I'm going to start with our taller arches on the left. Again, I can see the tallest one, so I'm going to approximately draw it. Okay, I can see how much space is left between the ceiling and that most pointy ridge, maybe a tiny bit more, just approximately somewhere there. I need to get my vanishing point back. Or I can look for the tops of all my arches. That should be the same line. That will be my approximate angle. It's harder to measure it because there's just so many small details. But that's an approximate. Yeah, so we're aiming for somewhere here. It's tiny bit higher, tiny bit lower. By the time we have our strokes slightly wider or narrower, we'll be fine. Okay. And for the rest of our arches here, I'm just going to do the same thing. Approximately something there. The other ones we can't even see. Without any details, definitions, something there. And as quick as, so then you're not overthinking. There's something pointy, there will be, we can tweak and look at them more into detail after. Maybe I've done them all totally wrong size, so I'm going to find out in a moment. Because next I want to start without attaching ourselves to any precise column or precise window. I'd like us from the back, starting from the back, we see our initial, that slightly darker arch surface here. I want us approximately do few parallel lines, okay, and they're getting slightly pointy, narrower character. Again, we can tweak all that one after. Getting slightly wider, wider. The gaps are getting between those ovals slightly wider as they come to us. Okay, just approximately. Don't have to attach them to anything. These are little guide shapes for us. Maybe my column will start to be here somewhere else as well. Okay. So we created a tunnel, a bit of a tunnel. Now, if we wanted to have a perfect architectural study, we would have had a compass, a ruler, a super sharp pencil, paper, loads of other tools to get us those millimeters out, right? We might need more than 2 hours to do it. So we'll just do an impression of it. Okay, we've done that. Another line I was talking about but I haven't drawn is the back wall, where we see the floor meeting the wall. I'm just going to place it in before I forget it. Okay, again, I'm going to just use that angle somewhere here. And again, I can just use my vanishing point for reference, or I can use the angle just picking up with a brush or ruler or anything straight, approximately something there. Okay. Now, what we see at the back will be much more blurred, blurry, less details. There will be some overall light and dark shapes. We can see it a bit more here, yeah? We start losing the volume of details. That's why I like that version of my photo. So we need to focus on the details at the front. So the first thing I'd like us to do is to draw our front column with some sort of branches-like, tree-like, bearing off ribs for the Cellarium ceiling. So I might plan my column now. Okay, where is it standing? So it's not maybe as close as I've drawn it here. Maybe it's going to be just a tiny bit further away from my line here. I don't want it standing right on the border of my painting. Okay, I can find approximate widths for it. Okay, and I want to find where it's going to stay straight up to what height, maybe somewhere here. And somewhere here it's slowly starting to veer off like a palm tree. Okay, one side, another side. Okay, and we can start spotting maybe a lovely angle here. Okay, again, we don't have to do things very precise. I'm going to look at those ribs. There is height to them, width to them. They've got different lights to them. So just directions will be plenty. Okay, maybe this one might planned arch. So I'm going to over the ceiling, so I might just move that one away. I'm going to have a look maybe at the different angle for it, for my rib here. They're not symmetrical. We've got 2 on one side and 3 on the other side. Excuse me. So this angle, I think we're about right here somewhere. And somewhere in the middle is a third one. So they like flowers or leaves coming to one unified stem of a column. The columns used to be in churches and cathedrals. Originally, they were representing tree trunks and plants and big shapes of nature. Okay. Now, there are loads of visual illusion and loads of gorgeous shapes going in and out, loads of lines connecting and interconnecting. That lowest line from that column is actually connecting diagonally to the second window. This is our first window. This is the gap between first and second window, and that arch actually connects to that window approximately. It might not connect, or we're going to make it connect. So this is my gap between my second and third window, and it's somewhere here. It looks more of a straightforward, more of a symmetrical as it appears to our eyes arch here. Okay. And another arch is coming from our same second window, but from the other side of it, and it's going to the opposite column. Right, this is the only complex bit we'll do. If they don't connect, it doesn't matter. We can still have it visually exciting. So that is going to be somewhere here. Okay. Those might be our key couple of shapes at the front. If they're a little bit lost, or that will be absolutely fine. Lines are wide, so we wouldn't be able to make them perfect anyway. So this is just something as an observation. And what that little crossing does for us, it gives us the middle of our ceiling. Oh, we could have done that line ourselves. Can you see a little darker pattern separating the ceiling on the right-hand side slightly darker and left-hand side slightly lighter, yeah? So that will be this line I'm looking for. So most of our arches in the middle, not most, well, the few, depends which arches we're referring to. They will all meet in that ceiling center line. Again, I could have used a directional line. That's when we're checking things, if things are looking right. And it connects to the center of my distant arch. Okay. So that's when we know where to change the light. So all those pointy corners I was trying to do are meant to be here. Okay, so it means that little bit, anything pointy, more stretched out, will be on that ceiling line. So we can even play with them afterwards. Now, I don't want to worry about those arches still. we're going to play with them. Right. We're slowly getting there. Just going to double check my line here. I might just move this one a little further back. So now I'm visually looking at shapes and just having a little sense of space here. Loads of lines, might be a little bit still confusing of what's going on, but we'll get there. For the back wall on the left, we see a few columns. I'm quite happy to keep them as a blank wall, or we can put a couple of lines, a couple of vertical lines. I'm just looking at this gap here. There is one column here. The next one, there are two columns fitted in. Okay, another one somewhere approximately one. That's a lovely light here. So I might plan that light. The other ones, I can't see anything else. So if any of the, don't want to be confusing ourselves with any of the columns elsewhere. So I'm going to keep them more simple as they are for now. Okay. Right, I think my drawings will be finished on this. Minor things, little details on the windows perhaps, but we can find those little things as we paint, so I don't need to do anything else. Just double checking this line. I just go back tiny bit more. That's it. Okay. Right, next bit. I'm going to pick up a slightly wider brush, but the same color and the same diluted consistency of it. So violet with a bit of terps. Still, oops, that's running. Okay, that's quite a lot of terps. Let's just dry it a little more. Now I'd like us to think of most dark shapes in the picture, and that's when I'm going to use this image. Some of them still a little bit confusing. Do I paint them all? What do I do here? Let's start from the right hand side where it's a bit more clearer. Okay, we've got the wall, which is dark, and we see the windows, which are stained blank. So around my first window, I'm just going to make sure that my paint is thinly applied. I can see the darkness next to that window. This side of the wall. Okay, I'm going to come back to the shadow in a moment. Just want to identify the darkness of the spaces here. So my windows are showing a bit more. Okay. Oil paints are very smudgy, so if your line moved, don't worry. This is all about finding approximate shapes and working with them. Okay. Now the top part of that darker shape, we almost see a line for it at the top here, yeah? And that will be our perspective line again. It catches certain shapes and certain shadows, but it almost gives us that perspective line. You know, like we've done the one for the top of the arches, for the bottom of the floors. So that's almost the same. So I'm going to use it. Okay, somewhere here, it would have gone to that vanishing point, and I'm going to paint over it. Okay, that bit, leaving the windows, yeah, something there. That's how I've got that shape, approximately, again. Windows a bit wobbly. There's very little space for some of the whites there. I'll prefer to keep them slightly bigger gaps open rather than painting it all in my violet. As long as we know we want to have maybe a window here. Okay. Right, what else we can make things dark? So next to the window, we have this lovely opening of the arch. Can we find it? Can we just define it a little bit more? So maybe I'll just drag that shadow a little bit further in, and I'm going to find more of a closer angle to that shape. And there's another one shape coming in. Okay, that's okay. That's looking better. It will slowly start matching to everything else. Okay. We've got those lines there. There's something dark here, so that's fine. I'm going to leave all these arches out for the moment. If you want to make anything just tiny bit more darker, you can, but you don't have to. Sometimes over blocking darkness it might be easier, harder for us to paint over it. Maybe the whole of that wall will go darker here. So we see the whole of that space of that wall. Now the back wall is all dark. Just nice and accurately painting that. Okay. And let's have a look at the shadows. Now, if I were to look at my black and white picture here, the shadow of the wall and the shadow on the floor has become one. If I were to look at the photo and color especially, we see the wall is slightly lighter than the floor. Okay, floor is darker here and it's got totally different colors, got loads of blues, maybe indigos in there. So for now, let's paint it a bit more similar, because my violet is not going to change much. To make it darker, I'll have to use very thick paint, which I don't really want. So I need to find, okay, one window, two window, three window, next to the third window, very, very narrowly next to it. We're going to have a little opening of the door, and we'll have direction of the shadow. So my little gap probably gone under my violet for my door, but I'll bring it back with the light after. So my shadow, and I'm going to change the direction, more vertical strokes for my wall, so I can recognize where that corner is, and I can use horizontal strokes for my shadow, and I can blend it out. Can use tiny bit of turbs to thin my paint down, or even use a bit of a tissue. Yeah, so a bit of a smudge there. Again, not the best shadow, but this is just understanding of where it is approximately. And again, we can blend it better, we can have a better color for it. And the other shadows in the distance are so small, and my brush is not going to be capable to do them so fine. I'm going to give them direction, okay, of horizontal strokes, couple of horizontal strokes. That will be enough. And I'll do the same horizontal strokes direction from my columns, and then those shadows just disappear. I can paint the whole floor at the back darker, and the darkness more or less staying here, if we're just looking at that bit, all together dark, and those individual lines of shadows gently blend into that. All the rest could be even dark here. Okay. So my supportive line, which was connecting all my columns, could go, or you can just continue ignoring it if you don't want to wipe it off, because sometimes it is just visually easier to see where if our columns gone too far or not. Okay, we're slowly getting there. Right, next. Again, let's break things down. Before I start picking what's light and dark on the back wall, which is quite busy still at the back, okay, I'm going to look at my column and its kind of branches at the front, first and second column branches. So I can see that area is slightly darker, okay. It's got some subtones to it, yeah, but overall it's going to be darker, and this area might have a bit more darkness to it as well. And again, we can subdivide them later into less darker options, but that might be easier for us to simplify it. And second column, we haven't looked quite at its branches of pretended tree. So I might just find that little cone of a shape first. Again, approximate. I don't know where that arch is going to go, what it's going to meet. I'm just more interested in silhouette. I haven't even put much of a thickness for that column, so I can widen it up a little. And it's darker, most left side, and a little bit of a center. Might leave a tiny bit of a gap for a rib. Yeah, for one of those little ribs. So that might be enough for me. The structure started to be more believable. Okay. Probably similar things will happen to the next column and the next column and the next column, but then we're going to have an approximate formula for it. Okay, something darker there, so that's my arches started to be a little bit more shorter, a bit more leaning inwards or outwards. For the further away shapes, I'm going to just stop it. That will be 2, 3, 4 maximum. A little bit. Right, next bit. Our center of the ceiling. I'm going to, from that line, just going to maybe just clean my brush a little, so it's not going to be so dark violet. Just going to put tiny bit of darkness on its border. Okay. And just wiping the brush again, just spreading it a little bit further close to me, because that shadow is going to be bigger close to us and gets narrower further away from us. So we've got more of a definition, more light, a little bit more of a contrast on the left. And maybe one of these shapes will start being slightly darker as well. Maybe not as against solid dark, but something we're identifying a bit more. Okay. Now, just looking at some of these ones, they might be slightly wider. Tree shapes. Okay, so we'll start seeing them as we start painting. Now, if I paint my back wall now, everything's just going to stay dark. So I'm just going to leave it for the moment, okay? These are more important, tricky shapes, what we need to focus on. The rest we can quite happily fill in with the color, darker color. As long as we remember our back wall need to have more darkness, except where we'll see some of the lights. So I'm happy with overall of my big shapes of darkness. What I'll need next is some most bold light. So if we were focusing on something, our darknesses of anything between 7 and 9s, yeah, we kind of combine them into one darkness. So we're going to look for anything, maybe 1 and 2, anything light altogether. 1 and 2, 1, 3 to 3. So I'm going to use a smaller brush. I'm going to go for, you know what, I'm going to go for buff titanium. If you don't have buff titanium, mix tiny bit of ochre with some white and a little bit of violet. A bit of buff titanium. And I'm going to go for my most bold light. So the space at the back, a little stroke, a little doorway. We found it. We've got the arch for the back, yes? So 1 arch, 2 on the 3rd one. We've got a little door opening here. This is more of an opaque stroke, so it's not transparent. It doesn't have to be very thick, but if you apply it thickly, that will be fine as well. This big window will have quite a bit of that light, but it starts getting slightly darker out. So if I'll paint more solid light on its right-hand side and maybe just blend it out. Tiny bit of turbs or even oil if you wanted to use oil. Okay, might be not in appearance it looks the same, but eventually I'll just make it slightly thinner. I might add more color to that. Now this shape is lighter as well, but I'm gonna just give it an idea it's lighter. There will be again some more color in there, so instead of us painting over layer, over a thick layer, I might just have an indication of it there, okay? Right, any other windows before we come to the light on the floor? So this one, we don't actually see the full shape of a window. We see almost like a blade, almost like a part of a knife. Yeah, very narrow, almost a bit more of a roundish shape and almost beginning of a handle there. Sometimes identifying the shape or associating it with something we can identify. We stop painting a window, we actually see a shape and paint a shape. And that white, that positive space given me that arch and how it connects to as the relief comes to the wall. Okay, next window, might just be a little bit careful with how far it is. I think it's somewhere here, and all I see is a little dab and maybe a tiny bit of a wider bit there somewhere. Again, as much as I notice, that will be enough. If I don't quite do it, it doesn't matter. And then we see more of an opening for the door. Okay, so I'm now more correcting, painting over my violet if needed. I'm just trying to find, using the gaps between the windows of the darker spaces to find my light. And from that door, I actually can paint a bit of light horizontally out. It will spread a bit more, but that's going to be a big light base. Okay. There will be some other gaps, other openings, other doors. There will be some other windows. I think we probably see 1 or 2, or maybe just a little dab for both of them. Okay, and if there will be some more gaps of light, will be much more narrower lights. Okay, that lovely rhythm of the light is settling in there. Okay. On my door on opposite side, I can make a connection of light coming from that as well. Somewhere. Okay. Right, any other strategical light? Most of the stonework will be of the medium darkness, like our ochre or anything that slightly darker, slightly lighter. It's going to be somewhere between 3 to 5 to 6 kind of darkness. Okay, but the most other highlighted areas I can see on the columns, kind of lower part of the columns. So I'm going to play with that color, just placing it. It doesn't mix overly well with our fresh violet here, so it's start to have a very strong purpley color, but that's okay. We can deal with it afterwards. So we're only identifying a bit of light. Okay, the further that row of columns goes, the less I'm going to be touching them. I might be just leave them out for, especially for now. But for that back, remember that shape we identified as the first shape, that arch in the distance. Within it, I'm going to paint a little bit of extra light. And it also will help me to define maybe a bit more of a pointy, tiny bit of a pointy end to the shadow. And the shadow above, the shadow below, maybe that tiny bit of space. Changing its light. And so as some of the arches will start having, you know how we've done the shadow on the middle of the ceiling, some of the light, again, just tiny bit, I'm going to put a little point, a little drag of a line, more of a reminder of some sort of light here and there will come from that part of the ceiling. Okay. Any light from the windows here, maybe somewhere here, might be spreading, but maybe not as bright as the one behind. But for now, it's will be fine to keep it as it is. Right, my tonal plan, my tonal shapes, tonal breakdown are in place. So we can start thinking of color. Right. So now let's have a look at some color. And I'd like us to start with our greens, our kind of medium darkness greens, what we see in some of the arches, maybe the corner of the window here, maybe some of those bolder greens, which come closer, kind of come to the front a bit more. So I'm going to use some white. Now I'm back to oils now, my 3 oils mixture. Bit of white, bit of ochre. Those will be our key components. And small amount of emerald green. Okay. Now I need to make sure it doesn't look emerald-like. I want to have more of that ochre and more of that warmth of the green present. So emerald as an pure color got more coolness in it. I want more of that warmth. Okay, I'm going to start putting them maybe on the side here so we see a little reference to them as we go. Okay, so let's see where we can put it. Maybe some of the ribs of our columns, ribs for our ceiling. Let's just place some color. It might be not too dark enough, maybe too dark for some of the areas, doesn't matter. Just let's play with a bit of color and then we'll see if it's the right darkness for it or not. Okay, so I can see a little bit of extra of this green here. Maybe a little bit on, I'm just gonna look at that, shall I call it tree from the first column, those lovely branch-like ribs. Okay, maybe something is gonna come a bit more here. So start blending with some of my ochres, that's okay. Will stand out better against some of the darker violets here. Maybe I'll find my, remember that arch we were trying to paint. And again, I just want you to stay loose. I want you to stay loose. And so I'm running out of paint, so I need more. And not to be overly perfect. So we're looking for color. Okay, there's some lovely bold color against some of the darks here. I'm just seeing it a bit more here. 1, 2, 3. So let's find those shapes. That one slightly wider. So again, I'm just intuitively and visually going for those shapes and approximate their widths. Okay. We need more paint. Let's mix more. If you're mixing and you're ending up slightly different version of it, that's okay. Okay. So let it happen. So slight variety of the same color is welcome. I want to have a bit more thicker paint. Maybe later on I might even put a highlight in here. There's another one somewhere here. And if I were to get my diluted violet again, surrounding it, I'll see it slightly better. Okay, so I'm just going to create a little bit of shadow between those shapes here. So this will remind me that I need something darker in this area. Okay, that's good. Quite a nice color. Is it still the same? Oh, it's a bit more ochre-like. Okay, that's good. Little variation of it. Is there another little one? Maybe tiny one. On the opposite side, let's have a look. We had part of our flat surfaces of kind of between the tree, between those semi-treed branches. What do we call them here? Dark, but those highlights are still here. Now, the further we're going away, I'm going to simplify. Instead of 3 lines, I'm going to put 2, or further down the corridor might be just 1, maybe just a little space there. Okay, so maybe just a stroke, just to see some color. So I'm making it as a almost a uniform idea of where they're gonna come. Okay. And also these lines are coming over and meeting our other colors on opposite sides, or other tree, other ribs shapes. Again, I'm kind of linking them, but there isn't any perfect identification. Right, this one comes to particular space. Yeah, which one is that? It's more of a light. If some of you painted woodlands with loads of tree trunks with me, we will never paint tree, well, very small circumstances, painting a line from top to bottom within the same color. often the tree varies in light and darkness, not just in color as well. So you never have that same block from top to bottom. The same with our arches. It's going to be changing in light, changing in color slightly. Okay, something might come here. Good. Can I see tiny bit of that light elsewhere? Maybe for my distant space, you know, where we identified most bold light block here. I might just put some of that color in, and it's not going to stay too dark, but it's no longer fresh white or fresh buff titanium. Okay, somewhere there. Couple of columns at the back got similar color, so I might just play there. Maybe paint more of that space as well across. Now I was talking about this color going on the window, and I haven't painted in the window corner here. Okay. And we can slowly start playing with pattern of stonework. So if I'll press and leave little stone-like impressions on top of my current buff titanium, I've got some sort of texture. Okay, maybe straightish. Now also don't forget this is a Abbey ruin, so there could be, even if it's on the photograph, the wall is not crumbling away. If your shapes, your strokes kind of suggest it, leave it. That would be fantastic. Okay, right. Can we go for slightly darker version of this green? So it means I need to put more ochre and more emerald green. That's where maybe our olive green will come in to help as well. Because this might be a bit too green-like. I'm going to place it here. Okay, maybe a bit more. I'm going to use some olive green. Olive green will make our paint slightly yellowish. Okay, the darkness remains, but it's much more warmer. Okay, let me see. Maybe not a huge amount, but still tiny bit of ochre then. Okay, that's a bit better for me. But is it dark enough? Let's place it somewhere here as well to check. Yeah, let's try that one. So we're talking about a small amount range, small amount darkness. Okay, let's see where we can put this one. I'm going to put it somewhere in between. Okay, where we can see a little more of a contrast. I'm going to try not to paint all my sketchy violet lines. In some places they will go, in some places they will remain. Okay. So I want to have a little more of that green present in our painting. Some of the arches, the ribs we've just been painting, they might have more of that color on the side of them or the top of them. Just have a little play, a bit of a stroke here, a little bit more there. Maybe some of these will start coming. So we're going to be more and more playful where we might want to put our colors. Maybe the lower part of that column where it just starts splitting, widening up. Okay, and it just disappears. Maybe a slightly darker stroke here at the top. Maybe a little borderline of light. And here we start kind of, if I go over some of my violety lines, it will give me a slightly darker ridge. So it becomes tiny bit more tidier. So use the violet as almost mixing the color on the surface of your painting. Okay, maybe something else here. Well, that's quite exciting little stroke at the back. Maybe one of these lighter shapes of green. Well, it's darker from what we've been using. Somewhere here, it's a nice vertical. Maybe I'll start filling some of the spaces. You know, some of the highlights of the back wall here on the left. So some of the parts of the columns, textures, some of the, a little bit more of the archway. So when I come with slightly darker color, there will be a bit more different. That will start looking like Egyptian frescoes painted in the olden days, ancient times. All these palm trees, at the moment green. Okay. Right, can we go slightly darker again? Very small amount. So we're moving from very small subdivisions of darkness. I don't want to jump too dark too quickly. This time, I'd like to add small amount of violet to our green, and also try adding a very small amount of cadmium red. Cadmium red will keep the color warmer, like the ochre did. Okay, violet will make it slightly darker. Okay, so it's made my paint darker altogether, but not huge amount. If it's not dark enough, I can add more of those pigments again, and just see what's your preference. If you want more of the cadmium red, or a bit more violet, or a bit more of an equal amount, doesn't matter. That will be your preference coming in here. Now, we don't want it to be overly red. If it's becoming overly red, you can always add small amount of emerald green. Okay, now it's become too strong green, so again back to reds. If it becomes too dark, you can always add more ochre. Okay, maybe a tiny bit more of that green. Okay. Right, let's place it in one of the areas here where we've been already putting some of the shadows. That's looking dark enough for this area, the center part of the column, that flat surface, which we can make gently darker eventually, but maybe that will be an overall darkness here. Okay. And again, I'm just going to play where I can put it. Anywhere else I can put it here. I already put something here, but can I subdivide it? Maybe put a little corner, little stroke. I'm playing with my color. Okay, this is going to be all the way, maybe much darker, but maybe part of it could have just a little bit of light. Yeah, little subdivision, already planning it ahead. Okay, any over these spaces again, perhaps for other columns. So now it's only our third green, okay, but the colors do mix with a bit of our buff titanium on the surface, with a little bit of violet, so they're becoming different. Right, anything else this color could come in here? I think maybe the lower part of our arches coming to the wall. Something in that direction, in that area, could have that color. Okay, so I'm just placing it, seeing what's gonna happen. Maybe dragging it a bit more. So we'll start mixing with my violet so it becomes darker as well. So violet will mix really, really well with those greens. If it didn't mix too well with that buff titanium, it will mix really well with our greens. Okay, and I just want you to enjoy it and see how the colors start mingling together. Okay, can I put similar color on the back of my columns? If any adjustments of angles need to be done, again, just look out for those things. Okay. Now for our back wall to stand out a little, we're going to start adding more cooler colors. So I'm going to be back to my ochre, emerald green, tiny bit of oil, as my brush is quite dry. So without using red, my color looks slightly towards more fresher emerald green, doesn't have that extra warmth. So that's my cooler version of it. So let's bring more of this color for the back wall. Some lovely shadows, I'm gonna come back to them. But there is, let's block most of that darkness in. Okay, if needed to have a little bit more cooler color, I'm gonna use some small amount of ultramarine and maybe maybe all white or buff titanium, so it's not so warm from ochre. Just gonna have, that's a bit cooler, yes, that's a bit more pastel-y in color. The moment we add white or buff titanium, our color becomes lighter. You don't over lighten it. I'm putting samples of greens as part of our session and seeing what's happening there. Yeah, it's give me a comparison of tones and actually, am I mixing the right colors? Yeah, I'm on the right track, or do I need to adjust things? Often it's harder to see the difference in color unless they're bordering each other. Okay, so those three are very close. Right, so maybe some more cooler green here. It's becoming like a turquoisey towards turquoise, that lovely coolness I'm emphasizing it a bit more so that we'll have stronger contrast between the other parts of the Cellarium. Also, this coolness, but maybe a lighter version of it, we see on the windows. We see on the lower part of the windows. Okay, maybe much paler. So I'm going from one color to another as it feels right, yeah? I've started the cool colors, so I'm starting to see where other cool colors could be. Okay, so maybe some of these areas. Maybe part of the lower section of the windows. And also I can see a little bit of coolness at the bottom of our columns as well, those bases. Lovely. We might find some of that coolness elsewhere on some of the ribs, but something we can play with later as well. Might just put a couple of lines and see if they will give us just a general contrast of light. So I've done a blocky colors for the back of the wall, but can I have tiny bit more lighter options as well? Remember when we're looking here, there's a little bit of light going on. Some of the light from the windows reaches out that wall. So I'm just going to put a couple of strokes to imitate a diffused light, bit of patchiness. Okay, don't have to be perfect patterns. Sometimes opposite, the more uneven they are, it's that light is traveling. Maybe the walls are less perfect as well. In quality of stone is different. Can have a bit more darker texture for our shadows eventually. I think that's too much. Okay. Right, and let's come back to our warm greens again. Okay, so that was one of my cooler ones. Now I said we're going to be changing brushes, but I haven't been changing them. So if you want to keep this color on and pick up another brush, so then when you want some of that cooler color back, you can still use it. So I'm going to pick up another brush for my darker tones. We're going to be talking about now 6 and 7 type of depths, looking at some of those areas where our darker browns would be. So maybe not solid blacks. Yeah, maybe some of the super dark tones will stay on the floor, maybe in the back wall, so something not quite there yet. So white, ochre, emerald green, quite a bit now cadmium red to make that lovely browny green, hacky green. Again, still it is a green, it's not just a red. Okay, I'm just going to check its darkness. I think it might be a similar one we had before. Yes, so maybe a little bit more red in it and maybe also a bit of violet. If it started to be too brown-like, maybe a small hint of green again. So that proportion is balancing it. Okay, let's check the color here. Let's check the color here. Yes, it's definitely darker than others. Right, and I'm gonna paint all here, blend it with my earlier color, and also start, if I need to tweak those ribs, maybe paint a little edge, or again, maybe shrink it a little more, maybe later on widen. So if I would have kept the color brush with a warmer color, that will be good to paint along the same time. Bit of one color and touching up with another. So I'll do a bit of darks and I'll get a third brush loaded with the earlier green. Okay. This area is all good, but I might just darken it on one corner here. Got more of a contrast. Oh, what's this one? Maybe I should have painted this one as well. Yeah, I think I need my third brush on the go. White, ochre, olive green, emerald green. Because I'm using smaller brushes now, it takes a bit longer to mix the same color again because it's just smaller quantity. Well, the surface is smaller. The surface of the bristles is a bit smaller. So I can go and correct myself if I've done something, maybe a slightly better arch angle. Okay, and again, this will be slightly different color, doesn't matter. And as I will be running out of it, I can also mix a slight variation of it as well. Okay, so I'm back to my dark brush and start painting a little bit at a time. Okay, I've got a darker surface here going up to the center of the ceiling. Okay, anything else that could go? Okay, maybe these. I'm gonna start having some sort of stone texture. Okay, maybe reinforce this light and direction here. That's where we start. Our paths, your path and my path might start changing. Where I need to paint, you might be okay, and vice versa. Just a little bit at a time. Now, center of the ceiling line is an approximate line just to give us a bit of guidance. It doesn't have to have super sharp color. It doesn't have to have super perfect border. Approximately, we'll visually start seeing it. Now, these bold highlights now not needed to be here. I'm going to replace them with my paler green. And I'm just going to introduce a couple of extra darker marks where some of these ribs are a little bit too dark. Ribs or gaps. So, okay, just a little bit more intuitively. And also stepping away or leaning away from your picture and gently started to spot that variety, getting rid of that fresh buff titanium. Looks a little bit more calmer now. Okay. Any of these browns, dark violets, gonna just smudge into them. Quite like them. So I don't want to lose them completely, but maybe interact them. Interact with them. Okay, let's give that one a tiny bit more, maybe red for my darks. And I want to do my wall here. Okay. And I can use a little bit of both. What I'm doing, if I'm using more red in my paint, I'm actually forgetting that my violet is still fresh. And by bringing fresher green color, I'm still mixing it with the violet. So maybe a bit of both. Slightly fresher greenish color and more reddish color will both be good for this wall. We're still blocking. Okay. Still have quite a lot of unblocked areas, but where some of the fresh violet against ochre shapes are, some areas they might remain there. That's okay. Okay, I want to get some of these parts of the wall covered. Maybe my window could be narrower by doing that stroke. Maybe the shape of the door opening will be slightly changing. Easier to paint with a darker color and narrow down the lighter shape. Okay, just smudging some of that violet with a bit of green. Maybe even the back of the wall here. So colors vary by themselves once we mixed it and we're working within that environment. Part of the job is already done. We're just covering the surface. Okay, I've a little bit overpainted my little light there, but that's okay. Maybe again back some of the suggestions of tiny bit of the dark arches here. Just doing a little bit more of an impression of that area. And the tricky part with the arches of our ceiling here is not to make them all the same thickness or vary them in that thickness, yeah, from that distance to close to us area. So the space could be shown with very small changes that what makes the space more recognized by our minds. Okay, so from my medium green, no, it's okay, that's my dark green. I thought I've mixed up my brushes. Right, can we go for our shadows? Greenish, darker shadows, some of those back walls, and we'll have some extra depth. Maybe we'll bring some of it here as well. I'm going to add more violet to my existing darker green, and I'm going to have more emerald green there as well. I didn't add any fresh white or ochres, just emerald green and violet. But that color has a bit of white or ochre or above titanium. So it's, if I would have just mixed those two together, it would have looked black. This one still appear dark, but not black. So I'm gonna get maybe an area here. Maybe slightly lighter gap. It might not be important. I'm gonna test it out. I think that's maybe a bit too light for it. Let's see. This is how we would paint some of the plants if you would have been painting sunflower leaves or some of the larger shapes, leaves or greens. It's part of your bouquets or still life or landscapes. We start subdividing those greens and start planning those flatter surfaces. So that's becoming quite an exciting area now. Okay, maybe it's something tiny bit more darker here. Quite suggestive, but getting more exciting. Okay, maybe something darkness. Not sure why it's a dark there, just maybe the shadows from those columns there, just quite suggestive. That column looks slightly darker, and then it's either slightly tiny bit of light in it. Again, I could have just simplified it more into the darker shape, would have been fine as well. I'm approaching it into more defined areas before I start looking at the whole again. Okay, a little extra depth. Can that extra deeper color come here as well? Okay, that just smudged less. Perfect, okay. Right, any other my darks? Okay, maybe this corner could be slightly darker. And I really want you to play. Play and see what will take your preferences, enjoying mixing those colors, what will start connect more in shape or in color. Okay, that depth is coming in nicely. If we're painting over a surface where we already applied a layer or even two in some areas, you might need to introduce thicker paint. So for example, if I need a sharper shadow, I'm going for direct thick violet. It will mix with all the green versions of colors here, and the violet is not going to be direct and it's not going to be overly dark, because the volume of paint on the surface will compensate. Okay, it's almost a shape within a shape. And I'm not much following the structure. I'm just trying to find a lovely variety of color here and looking for its bit of a pattern. And that gives me that structure naturally. Okay, maybe something under the windowsill, something's extra darker, little border. Okay. Right, let's see if any plain orange need to be colored on the ceiling or walls before we get to the floor. And let's just gently tweak those areas so a little bit. Now, if you will keep some of the ochre showing, that will be wonderful as well. So don't be scared of not covering it all. But some places might be a little bit too obvious. Okay, I'm not sure what's happening here at the moment. Might just unite that line. I don't like having too many parallel lines. I prefer to have them more suggested or more blended and a bit of a lost definition than overly clear. So any sharp contrasts which I'm not sure about, I'm going to lose them. Or blend them a little more. Well, by losing them, I mean to blend them slightly. Okay, let's mix that one with existing green here. Filling up my gaps here. I'm trying to, the oil paint sometimes over smudges things, so I do love the softness of the borders, but gentle contrast, we still needed them. We can't have everything just being smudgy. A little bit of contrasts, a little bit of borders still needed. Okay, that one, that one. So have a look at a couple of these shapes. A little bit lost here, but let's redefine them back. Okay. Right, I did like those beautiful lights here, so I might just bring the ends and find the stopping points and maybe put a cleaner color later when I start doing some more highlights. So I'm kind of preparing those areas for tidy for later. Okay, that's looking good. Okay, needed to over smudge them and then bring highlights after. That's okay as well. Right, all this area is looking a bit patchy here to me. Might just simplify it and then add again a highlight, more unified highlight. Okay, that's already unifying those shapes. That's good. Okay. Good, right. Base of my columns needs slightly more light. We already put some whitish buff titanium, but let's just gently paint over it so it's not super fresh white. Okay, we started to have a little bit more. Again, I can remember to have an extra highlights on them, but they started to show through. And most importantly, they need to appear straight, or as straight as we can get them. Right. We're getting there. I'm just simplifying the last little shapes in there. Right, good. Now my floor, the color of the floor, is working reasonably well with the browns. So if any of you fancy leaving it with more of those violets and browns, I think that it will be fine. I'm just going to add a small amount of cooler color there. And then we'll tweak a couple of highlights on the arches, and I think we're more or less there. So I'm going to keep my 3 small brushes aside. I'm going to have a slightly cooler color. Right, I've got a mucky brush, so a bit of white, a little bit of ultramarine. Now, ultramarine is a very bold color. We don't want it. So using a bit of buff titanium kind of turns it to slightly less bold blue. So it's a bit of ochre. If you use any other blues, your ultramarine will become, your blue will become green. But ochre and ultramarine give us kind of grayish tone. It also links to our greens, but it's not a green. I'm going to just test it out here. I think that will be more of my medium darkness, maybe like 4 and 5. So I'm going to go for where my ochre is and paint over those areas first. Okay. I'm kind of avoiding my darks and I'm avoiding my light initially. Then I can wipe my brush off. Okay, and then I can smudge my borders with the light. And we're more or less there. If it's not enough, I just put a tiny bit of buff titanium. My brush, mingle that paint into my bristles and then bring it back here. I just need a tiny bit more oil for it. So it's a soft smudge. I don't want strokes shown too strongly, please. The softer that blend, the better. And the distance, I'm quite happy with my existing color there, so that's all good. Now for the extra shadows, you know, where we've got the browns. So I've got that in between blue first, and I'm going to add a little more ultramarine, a little bit more violet, and a small amount of Payne's Grey. If it's too blue, go for slightly more black. If it's too dark, we can even add a small amount of cadmium red. So it's again brings it close to our existing color, brings it, takes it further from a fresh blue. We can see it's darker color than our wall. Yeah, it's kind of appears blue, but it's not really direct blue. So I'm going to just bring it over and smudge afterwards. I just want to block those areas first. Because I used my violet quite thinly initially when I was applying the darker shapes for the shadows, it's not over influencing my color here now, and the tape's more or less dried. Okay. Okay, so I've applied it now. Now I'm going to again clean my brush and smudge it a bit more. So if some of those shadows will spread a bit further, that's okay. Just give it a lovely smudge. More playful smudge for the areas close to our columns. Okay. And maybe less fresh browns for the distant shadows as well. I think that's all good. Right, any of these smudges, cloth, finger, brush. Just don't want that too defined shape. Okay, sorry, a bit of buff titanium for me again, perhaps. Okay. Those little variations. Now, floor is done. I'm going to come back to my highlights where I need a bit more fresh white titanium or oaken white. I think white titanium with one of my lighter green brushes should do the trick. So it will be a highlight, but it still has that connection to green. Might just check it on a couple of my columns here. Bring. If your brush is filling up with paint, especially on the later stages when we just want a thinner stroke or a little bit of application of paint, pressing on the brush against your palette, you can take some of that paint off, but not always that technique works. So I'm just going to wipe it off, okay, just really squeezing it out. Got quite a lot of paint here. I can use all of that, okay? So I can just scoop it back, okay? But I have got a much more flatter brush. There's no thick paint on it. And I can just bring it, put it on my tip of the bristles, and I've got much more control. The thickness of the paint is there. The color is there. I haven't lost it. So let's put a little extra light here. Maybe not quite light enough for the bottom of the column, but let's will tidy my column here first. Let's check if this is light enough for some of the arches here. Okay, for the arches might be okay. I might just lift my picture gently up so it's not reflecting on the last stages. Right, I've got a tiny bit of white here as well, so I can have a slightly lighter tone. I prefer to have warmth in it instead of just white or buff titanium or white with ochre will give us that warmth. So don't just go for just direct white. It might just be a little too strong. Okay, let's give it another go. Okay, that's a bit brighter, that's good. So we only want to have little taster for the light. Okay, maybe a little bit here. So is it just catching it here? Is it just, yeah, having that little suggestion? Small amount of time. You can always bring more. Okay. Maybe this one could go. Good smudge. Back, that's when we want to start digging a little bit more into this and a little bit more into that. I'm going to try to focus just on some highlights and keep the rest reasonably vague. So let's break this area down from a flatter surface to more shinier ribs. So let's get some of those semi-arches coming out from columns. Yeah, just give us that little extra shine to it. Okay. A little extra dab. A little extra tidy. The columns has more ridges than I can actually paint them in this in this kind of size. So it's totally fine keeping them more round rather than having so many granules to them, or the broken down surfaces to them. Yeah, they're probably made out of 6 plus, I think maybe 8 shapes. Okay, this one's got a bit of sharpness, so maybe these will have a little bit of it as well. Okay, that suggestion could also come tiny bit more here. So as much as I want to have, right, just here, 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 and then, yeah, I'm working small amounts at a time through the whole picture and gently giving it, okay, I've got a blob here, gently giving it space to almost visually recognize where I could do with another little light. Oh, we wanted some lights here. We wanted a little extra light somewhere here. Maybe stretch it, blend it. I think that was this one I wanted. Maybe not. Not this one. Okay. That shine is happening now. Okay, good. Right, any subtones within our lights? So some of our doorways, can we just make a little variety of light in them? So they're not perfect, and then I'll touch them up with some extra light whites. Okay, that's one's there, that's one there. Maybe another little crossing line somewhere here. And those are parallel ones, so maybe gently changing its direction. I just want to make these shadows slightly more important, just showing just a little more strength to them. And unity at the same time. That's all going well. Right, and then a couple of extra highlights for my white. Just gonna go for direct white. You want to make up a couple of highlights as well for some window or doors in the distance. That's lovely. Don't be scared of improvising those things. Okay, that's singing much more now. And I might even put a couple of highlights on the mortar. And as always, we can continue tweaking the work as much or as little as we want. As little will give us more freshness and simplification. The more we do it, the more definition we have. I quite like this bold, strong shadow now. Might just keep a tiny bit more of a border light before I smudge it into other light. Okay, that's got a little more strength of entrance into the Cellarium. And I think I'm happy to stop. There are a few tweaks I could do with, but equally, I'm happy to stop where I am with a few suggestive things. But again, within a week, I might come back to my painting, look at it with some fresh eyes, and touch a couple of things. So thank you very much for today. Not one of the easiest tasks today, but if you continue playing and just take the whole piece as I'm not painting a defined architectural piece, but I'm playing with my greens, my playing with a bit of dark and a bit of light, and if needed, smudge things, make things more abstract, and then put a bit of highlight, put a tiny bit of shadow, and you will be more on the right track rather than doing too much definition. Thank you very much for today. I hope you got on well, and I'll see you next week.